Dan and Corey here, welcoming you into Libservative.
The great fundamental issue now before our people. We, the people, cannot turn back.
Yeah, welcome in to another rousing rendition of Libservative. No Bell the Bodysnatcher tonight. He is away doing fondling dead people or something. I don't, whatever the hell he does for his job. He is always this Corey Walsh.
Way to diminish that. And he's Dan Griffin.
I don't know. I just figure that's just you can leave it
it's just something like that.
You can leave it up to people's imaginations. Intellectual idiots fostering political and cultural literacy. We've got probably what's not going to be our best show tonight because all of the shit we're going to talk about is kind of boring. So we're going to do it anyway. Now won't be the worst. Won't be the worst. That's impossible. I guarantee you, I can find 14 that are probably going to be worse that have been worse than what this one's going to be. But before we dive into it, Corey, tell all the people the places in which they can find us.
Libservative Podcast is found on all social media and podcast platforms. Our website is libservativeshow.com. We can be found at Libservative on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Instagram and Twitter at LibservativePod. Our TikTok videos can be found at Libservative Podcast.
Yourself.
And you can reach out directly at libservativepod@gmail.com. Subscribe today.
Don't get bogged down by all the haters out there.
I sure as shit won't. Haters make me famous. Not going to steal my piece, Satan.
Not going to steal our means of production. What do we have in front of us?
My means of production, brother.
What do we have in front of us this evening, Corey? We have the New Hampshire primaries taking place last night. I was excited for, I don't know, about 5 minutes before that went away. This would be the most boring season, the most boring election season we've ever had. We're going to go over some polling numbers. Corey just said he wanted to go over some polling numbers. I don't know what these are going to be, so you're going to find out with me. This is going to be fantastic.
I just pulled up 538. Figured we just run down the list.
The WEF at Davos last week, and I loved the way Walter Kern put Davos as a trade show for oligarchs and powerful people, because that's exactly what it is. There was one great speaker there that the establishment is trying to, of course, portray as right-wing, because that's what you do when anything that is anti-establishment ever comes up for any reason at all. They're just right-wing, and right-wing just for some reason means bad. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, yes, our old girl, MTG, for, I don't know, maybe the second or third time since we started doing this show, Corey, showing a little bit of backbone and actually having some principles. I know you're not allowed to say that about somebody like
Dan,
MTG.
You're absolutely right. In the 2 years that we've been doing this show, Marjorie Taylor Greene has said exactly 3 things that we agree with. And all of her blustering and grandstanding that she's done. What would that be? 724 days or 624 days.
Well, isn't that what we talk about a lot?
724, yeah.
Don't try to do the math. Isn't that what we talk about a lot, though, on this show, Corey? Is it's like, but what about the message? Like, I don't care who's delivering the message if the message is correct. I don't care who it is. Sometimes the message is right, but we always go with, or the way we're taught to do things is to go with who's delivering the message as opposed to what the message actually is. So we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. And bureaucracy, and I don't know for sure, but in this case, I'm going to guess like democratically led bureaucracy. I'm assuming Houston's politicians are mostly Democrats, seeing as it's a big city. I could be wrong about that. I don't know a whole lot about Houston, Texas politics, but either way, bureaucracy, keeping homeless people homeless and hungry. So that's great. And Yeah, Corey also wrote in here Texas versus the Fed, so we'll find out exactly what that's all about. But before we get in,
Oh, surprise! Corey's throwing in a curveball.
but before we get into any of that, Corey,
Well,
what did you learn?
So
in
wait,
school
real
this
quick,
week?
before we get into anything, we read the tagline.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about what we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. We having a show prep meeting live on the air?
Down the field, a Lions team that will not yield.
Come on.
And when the blue and silver wave,
Come on, they deserve it.
and then cheer
I get it. It's also the
the
dumbest fight song in all of the NFL.
What'd you say?
It's also the dumbest fight song in all of the NFL.
It's the worst, but it's the best because it's the worst.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, Corey, because the Detroit Lions playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl for only the second time ever is actually one of the...
Yeah, but have we ever been just 60 minutes away from a Super Bowl?
Yes, in 1991 or 19. Yeah.
Did we make it?
January
Did we make it that many games into the playoffs?
Yes, they had a bye week the first week. They beat the Cowboys, and then they played the Washington then Redskins. I hope I'm still allowed to say that when we're talking about it in culture.
They really fucked it up with the Commanders
historical context, but the then Washington Redskins in the NFC Championship game and got our asses kicked like 41-10 or whatever the hell the final score was. So
well,
that actually is
I wanted to hear.
That actually is what I learned this week, Corey. That's what I learned in school this week. I learned that the Detroit Football Lions are the new lovable losers that have started to win, that America is just latched onto and loves. I learned that this week. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. However,
were they the lovable losers in the 90s?
They've been the lovable losers. It does what does that matter?
I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm just looking to see if history repeats itself.
Lovable losers in the context of they've never won a Super Bowl and they haven't won a championship since 1957. But this is what I want to make all real Lions fans aware of. That hysteria goes away real fast when you start winning. I think of the Boston Red Sox when they finally won a World Series in 2004. Everybody was rooting for the Red Sox. Everybody loved the Red Sox in 2004, 2005, 2006. Then they won a few championships, and now the entire world hates them. The Chicago Cubs in 2016 finally ended their big long curse and won a championship. And I don't know that anybody hates the Cubs as much as they hate the Red Sox, but I was awfully annoyed with them pretty fast. So if this team wins, you are going to be the annoying fan base going forward. That's what I learned this week. That the Detroit Lions are in that lovable loser sort of honeymoon right now. How long will that last? Probably if they win next year or the year after,
Sunday, right?
Be over. Yeah, it might be over. So that's what I learned this week. The Detroit Lions are that lovable losers turned winners, America's team style weirdness.
So as someone who loves and full disclosure, I am a newborn latching onto the teat of the Detroit Lions. And someone who isn't closely following the NFL. Do the Lions have the talent to make it?
Yes, they can win on Sunday. I don't think they will, but they can.
Do you think they can beat the Baltimore Ravens?
That's going to be even more difficult because they played them once this year and got waxed on the road by Baltimore. So yeah, but it's the Super Bowl. You never know. Anything can happen in the Super Bowl. So I don't expect the Lions to beat San Francisco on the road this week. I'm not going to sit here and act like they have no shot because they definitely have a shot. It's not. It's
like everyone has to show up. Like every single person, every single play, every single move, they have to be on cue.
Yeah, they have to play an A+ game, I think, to win. So there you have it. It's not impossible.
I mean, that's it. You're way more into sports than me. So sometimes, like when it comes to things like this, I really value your opinion.
I'm just being realistic. Obviously, I'll be rooting for them, but we'll see. What did you learn in school this week, Corey?
Okay. So what I learned in school this week is that versus most like disagreements, like that people have with people, political disagreements light up, like under an MRI scope, light up a different part of the brain. And that political disagreement is a phenomenon that involves different cognitive processes in the brain, such as emotion, reasoning, and memory. According to some recent studies, political disagreement can affect how the brain responds to new information and how it encodes the opinions of others. And some of the findings is when people disagree with someone who has a different political ideology, the brain becomes less sensitive to the strength of the other person's opinion. This means that they are less likely to change their minds or consider the other person's perspective. This effect is observed in the brain region called the posterior medial frontal cortex, which is involved in cognitive dissonance. People who share a political ideology have more similar brain activity when they process political words and images, and they also segment new information into the same units of meaning. This suggests that they have a common neural framework for interpreting political information, that they are more likely to agree with each other. And there's a bunch of more mumbo jumbo that I wrote down, but I don't want to bore everyone. Essentially,
Too late.
as I'm reading it, I'm like, dude, Dan's eyes are just glazing over right now. Basically, what I learned is like our brain reacts to like just somebody having.
Fuck yourself.
No, I get it. Lay it on me. But the brain reacts differently to like a political disagreement than it does to somebody saying they like a different team or like a different color, or if they're Ford versus Chevy, or if they're Glock versus Smith and Wesson. Or
do you think that's because
like,
do you think that's because because you do get the sense when you see political
or even
arguments,
I mean, for someone who's on the left versus Beyond Meat versus the Impossible Burger, like I don't know, you can't like when there's disagreements in everything except for politics.
Do you think that has anything to do with, and this is just a couple of intellectual idiots that don't know shit about neuroscience or anything like that? Do you think that that it kind of lights up the same part of the brain that has like this tribal, like survivalist, the monkey part of our brains that we have?
Yeah. No. There's a lot of
like, why is politics
stuff? They talk about a higher brain and a lower brain, and politics is absolutely ingrained in the lower brain of tribalism and stuff. And some of it has to do with like the narratives and the verbiage is thrown around. But like that's why when people talk about political opposition as like vile, and they use words like disgust and things like that, because those words are ingrained in your brain and my brain when it comes to very primitive things as we're children, is like, this can make you sick, this, and you know what I mean? Like this can kill you, different like things that you would eat and stuff like that, that your body would disagree with. And it's all like the narrative and like in the verbiage and stuff is kind of similar to that, to where it's words that are ingrained in you that create the repulsive feeling you feel in your stomach when it's about something, and they attribute it to something that you disagree with, to where they know how to pinpoint your instinctual shit in your head. Again, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know the exact verbiage, but like you can Google this stuff. I don't know the exact words, but they use words that people in general have to word association that creates almost like the gut instinct to like vomit, or like what's the word when you're about to puke? Like
heave,
I can't
dry
think of the
heave.
word. Yeah, dry heave. Yeah, the dry heave feeling. Like you can attribute people, like when you think of Hitler, when you think of things like that, like just the word genocide and stuff like that, they're attributed to that dry heave feeling. You know what I mean? Like when you hear those words, it gets gross. Like if someone's committing genocide, immediately you're like, ugh.
So that's why the word genocide is going to be maybe the most popular word of 2024.
But that's what makes me so fucking mad about that, because
Just use it as a weapon.
Some words should instinctually be ascribed to
Ascribed.
ascribed, attributed. I mashed them together. don't give me shit. No one would have said shit if you didn't say shit. But like certain words should be ascribed to like that gut-wrenching feeling of like, like child
that's
hunger,
kind of the
genocide. These words are, but that's when we talk, and it's interesting, right? Because we talk about how the power of words, like racism, genocide.
Yes, that's a great.
Those words should 100% be ascribed to that feeling of wanting to vomit.
Well, and that's what
but
makes
when they constantly get thrown around and being attributed to the most measly things, that just because someone disapproves of your ideology or doesn't agree with your opinion, you don't immediately just say these words, because then that gut-wrenching feeling is going to go away, and then the actual meaning of these disgusting words, the power of them, will go away.
Well, that's what makes the pushers of like whatever you want to call it, the this woke agenda or the DEI agenda. That's what makes these people actually kind of brilliant, is because they take these words and they bastardize them and they ascribe it to anybody.
Manipulation and brilliance don't go hand in hand.
Yeah, but it's brilliant. It's been a brilliant tactic because it's fucking working. I mean, it's backfiring.
3-year-olds can manipulate.
It's starting to backfire. It's starting to backfire for sure. We're seeing it called out, a lot more. And then like using that as a way to push an ideology like progressivism, even though it's completely anti-progressive, it's completely anti-liberal, the way that they use these words. And they essentially, if I say, I don't know, this trans woman that's now apparently winning golf tournaments shouldn't be playing with the ladies. Oh, you're a bigot. You're a transphobe. You're probably, and because you're those two things, you're also probably a racist. You know what I mean? Like, because those things go together.
You're right. It's brilliant in the short run.
Yeah.
But I try to think about the long run. Like in the long run, it's stupid. A lot of times things that are brilliant in the short run are terrible in the long run.
Well, it sucks up all of the actual stupid people and gets them involved in the cult and in the religion.
Yeah, but the fucking numerous, not noisy, of the stupid people that are running around, unfortunately, they're the ones that are have the most numbers to grab the wheel of the ship to drive it right into a goddamn iceberg.
It grabs a lot of smart people at first too, or even just average intelligence people, which I think is kind of where.
But then they get labeled as contrarians because they're no, don't say that.
Yeah, even if you're of average intelligence, you recognize what's going on here at some point. Like we've talked about this before. I mean, I don't know about you as much as me, but like I had Trump derangement syndrome for a while. I thought every Trump voter had to be a racist. Like, because that's
we're doing a podcast because we caught each other's attention on just posting every single goddamn day about how much we hated Trump.
And we still do, but we're a little bit more cognizant of like what that actually means. But anyway,
we were some of the lucky ones to realize like this, like when you're in a room of 100 people and there's a magician and he does one trick and he gets everyone and he fucking bamboozles everyone, right? And then you're like, there's like 2 or 3 people, and like most of the people are just enjoying it, but then there's like 2 or 3 people that are like, no, that motherfucker did something, and you're watching closer, and then it takes like 4 or 5 more tricks, but then like you finally catch it, and you're like, no, he did this. And then it's like, oh yeah, but okay, that one, but what about the other ones? And you're like, no, he did something else. I just didn't know what it was. And they're like, shut up and enjoy the show. Right? That's a pretty good fucking parable or analogy, right?
That's TDS pretty much in a nutshell.
Don't get bogged down by all the haters out there.
We saw the tricks, and again, what caught me to realize TDS was TDS is when Biden got into office and all of a sudden the goalposts on morality changed.
100%.
Bitch for 4 years about government encroachment,
Kids in
about
cages.
mockery, kids in cages, and then all of a sudden the Democrats got in charge and nothing fucking changed. And they had the House, the Senate, the presidency, and people still excuse it away when it's like, no, fuck you.
Remain in Mexico policy stuck around for a while.
It's still around.
Yeah.
Now we're having Mexico, so the Democrat remain in Mexico policy, and I was actually going to talk about this on the show. The reason why it's different, in quotations, is we convinced Mexico to just do that on their border instead of ours. It's still kind of remain in Mexico or keep people south of Mexico's border.
Oh, gotcha.
And that's why numbers are waning right now. Because the immigration numbers are waning.
Yeah.
And you watch the Biden administration is going to.
That's relative, Corey. That's like saying, but Corey, that's like saying inflation is down. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. You're right. 100%. You're right. But you watch, they're going to start touting how immigration is waning under the Biden policies and under the Biden administration.
And that's
we're literally again robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Well, and not to mention it's the shitty game that they always play. And Trump did it, and Trump will do it again if he's reelected, and Biden's going to do it this year because it's an election year. You do the things, you do just enough to you
make
can say,
the numbers.
Look at this thing that I did. Yeah, look at this thing that I did, and because that's what the inflation. That's what the inflation numbers are too.
Right? Where it's like it's so easy for you to quickly adjust these numbers. And I know I just said that being right in the short run isn't equivalent to isn't as important as being right in the long run. But in the short run, the government is so fast to be able to make these things happen, to make themselves look good in the short run, to where it's like, if you just took a little bit more oomph, if any of these fuckers worked what a normal blue collar worker is trying to struggle to take care of his family.
Yeah. And
you might actually be able to take care of these things.
And that's what's going to be interesting about. We don't have it in our topics tonight, but we can talk about it just briefly here because it kind of ties in. The fact that the UAW just finally endorsed Joe Biden. I mean, I give them a little bit of credit because it took them a really long time. I think we all knew that eventually the UAW was going to endorse Joe Biden.
Yeah, they think about it.
But here's the thing, Corey. It's going to be interesting in Michigan come 2024 because most of the Democratic pundits in Michigan right now, a lot of the the experts in the inner circles just within the state in the Democratic Party are saying, they even said this on CNN today, and CNN isn't usually going to do anything that's going to shit on the Democrats. But I can't remember who said it, but one of them said that, I think it was John King, said that a lot of these higher up Democrats in the state of Michigan are saying that if the election was tomorrow, Joe Biden would lose the state of Michigan. And the reason for that is because what do we have? 200, 300,000 Arab Americans in the state of Michigan. We have the largest set of Arab Americans in all of the United States. And they're not real happy with Joe Biden.
The largest concentration of Middle Easterns in Michigan.
And they are not real happy with Joe Biden on his Israel policy, but it's not even that. It's a huge contingent, but it's also the fact that young voters are turning on Joe Biden. And that doesn't necessarily mean that like kids on college campuses like the University of Michigan or Wayne State or any of these, that doesn't mean they're going to go to the polls and vote for Trump. It just means they're not going to show up. That's what it means. So, yeah, I mean, you, right here, right now, Joe Biden loses the state of Michigan to Donald Trump if the election is right here, right now, today. And I don't know that that's going to change too much between now and November.
You don't think that the fear of Trump still has a lot of weight?
I don't because I think a lot more people are turning to the state of mind that like you and I have. Like
that's interesting.
Donald Trump is awful
because everyone in 2020, if we're talking about like young people, let's say within whatever the year is, 2 years younger. Like, let's say, so the year's 2020. So people in 2020 between 18 and 24, 4 years later, they'd be 22 and 26. Okay. If we're really relying on the younger vote, we're talking about people who are a little bit older, who probably would just not show up. And then younger people who are now 18 in 2024, who were 14 under Trump. And 14-year-olds have you know what I mean? Like, as a 14-year-old, your life and politics are just worlds apart. You
might not even know shit about politics at 14. I know I didn't. I know I didn't care.
No.
When I was 14.
So at 18, with Trump being gone for 4 years, if you're relying on the younger vote, at 18, with Trump gone for 4 years, you're not going to have the disdain that people did in 2020 who were 22 years old, who saw Trump at 18.
Well, and I think
does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, Trump's
you're
been
right.
gone long enough that they can't. I think tapping into that whole Trump derangement syndrome fucking antic isn't going to have the same oomph as it did in 2020.
It's not going to resonate with 18-year-olds, but even the people that it resonated with in 2020 and even 2016, myself included, I think a lot more voters are in the headspace that you and I are in, where we look at this and we go, yeah, Donald Trump's terrible. He wasn't a good president for various reasons that we won't get into right now because it would take an entire show. He won't be a good president the second time. But is he this fucking awful, uniquely terrible, awful, dangerous threat to society and to democracy? Absolutely fucking not.
No,
that narrative is on life support right now. And
so
that's
where
not
your
good
TDS,
for Joe Biden.
So that's where your TDS and my TDS differed, right? Because in 2016, I didn't really pay as much attention to Trump because I was so pissed off at the Democratic Party of how they were fucking Bernie that I voted for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as Bernie dropped out, like, I didn't like Trump, but I didn't give a shit about him. And as soon as Bernie dropped out, and then the WikiLeaks leak happened about how Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the head of the DNC at the time, was talking about how Bernie needs to get in line and how they're doing everything they can to make sure that Hillary wins. And that when Bernie, as soon as he declared his presidency, the super delegates were 1,400 out of 2,200 or 2,400 for Hillary.
Yeah.
And because the fucking DNC at the time had super delegates, and then they had
delegates. The super delegates just looked like they just appeared out of thin air. Like every day, the
whoever they wanted. Right.
Where the fuck did this come from? Yeah.
I had more grievances then against the Democrats where I didn't have the TDS at that point to where I voted for Gary Johnson. And then when 2020 came around.
I'm sorry, what is Aleppo?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what is Aleppo? And so when 2020 came around, so then 2018 is when so between 16 and 18 is when I had my serious TDS, and I was like, fuck this. And then 2018, 2019, it was like, this is just fucking stupid. And then when 2020 came out, just like, fuck it, and voted Libertarian again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, you were a better man than me because I voted for Hillary and for Joe Biden. So you're a better person than I am, I guess, in that way. Not again. Won't be happening again. Anyway, we have taken this show.
Hashtag not again.
We have taken this show way off into left field. I guess. I mean, since we're on the topic basically at hand, we can get into the New Hampshire results from yesterday. I guess my takeaway, Corey, is that we got exactly what we knew we were going to get.
Like when we expected, what big shocker.
When when the polls first started to close and Nikki Haley was, I think for a brief moment there, she was like inside of 6 points, something like that, like right at the beginning. And then 45 minutes later, every major news organization is calling it for Trump.
Well, there was
Obviously,
a point where it was like 46-51.
I think that was
points.
exit polling. I think that was exit polling though. I don't think that was actual results. I could be wrong, but I think that was exit polling.
So I was going back and forth between CNN and MSNBC just because I was hoping for the meltdown. And I saw a little bit of it. I saw a little bit of the pandering, and I saw a little bit of it, and I was like, because it's exactly what I was looking for. I was like, there it is. And it wasn't much, to their chagrin. Like, there wasn't much. It was when there was this point where it was Rachel Maddow.
Oh God.
And she goes to this guy, and he's at a poll in New Hampshire or whatever, and it's this guy from Dartmouth, some young kid. And he kind of said the quiet part out loud where I don't think you're supposed to be saying this. He's like, but yeah, I'm here for a strategic vote. He's like, obviously I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, but I came to vote in the Republican ticket because I'd prefer Nikki Haley to face Joe Biden than Trump.
No, but before you continue, I actually love that about New Hampshire, that you can go and vote in either primary. Like, I think you should be allowed to do that everywhere in the country.
We can do that in Michigan.
You can, but you can only vote for one or the other.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same there.
Is it? I thought you could vote.
Yeah. No.
Oh, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, we have the
I'm
same.
an idiot.
Michigan has some beautiful things. Like, you can, like, if you don't give a shit about the Democratic primary, you were right. But in New Hampshire, you have to either leave the party or not. What is it? You have to declare independent.
Yeah.
There.
You have to essentially have to register. Yeah.
Yeah. In Michigan, when you go to the polls, they go, "Are you Democrat or Republican?"
Yeah, you just check a box.
One ballot, and then they give. Yep. Everyone gets the same ballot, but you have to vote. You have to notch one or the other.
You go and they give you the little slip. You put your name on it. You put your name on it. You check out the Republican or Democrat.
We have so much shit just right. We just have so much shit right. For all the way we have wrong, there's certain things that we just have right. But that interview with the guy that was on when Rachel Maddow was like, oh yeah, so and so. I forget the guy's name, and he's like, oh yeah, he talked to him about this, but he made sure to point out that a bunch of people were writing in Joe Biden's name to show unity and solidarity.
Unity and solidarity.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, unity and solidarity to the status quo warmongering establishment. Good for you. And I love how,
amen, brother.
I love how that's not really a publication, but Twitter feeds like Occupy Democrats are like, oh, Biden won 76% of the Democratic vote as a write-in, and Trump only got 50-something%. It's like, you are like this is your takeaway. This is your takeaway from the New Hampshire primary. My only other takeaway is that
talk about low, I wonder what the actual fuck. I wish Bell was here because I could ask him right now how many people voted on the Republican primary versus the Democrat primary. Because everyone's talking about the results, but I'm curious to see how many numbers actually showed up for the Democratic tickets.
Right.
Because of the fact that how many people just didn't show up, as evidenced by the fact that Marianne Williamson got the only names on the Democratic ticket was Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips.
Yeah, and Dean Phillips beat Marianne Williamson.
I know. Sorry, old girl.
Yeah,
I just don't think that. I just you.
I don't.
Right now, no, and I'm not knocking her. You can have very valid points. You can have very valid. No, I guess I am kind of knocking her because I'm just saying it in a nice way. You can have great points. You can have great idealistic principles or whatever you want to call them. But
she's the Democratic Ron DeSantis, except worse.
Yeah, but it's just, it's But if people don't show up and show out and vote for you, then you ain't shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And that my only other takeaway was that this, I think, was the fucking the battle of the bulge, right? It was the last stand for the Republican Party to not just be 100% the party of Donald Trump. New Hampshire in 2024 was the last stand against this. And that stand got absolutely fucking bushwhacked. This is, if it wasn't before, this is absolutely 125,000% Donald Trump's Republican Party, and nobody is taking it away from him. How do we know this? It isn't just the results in Iowa and New Hampshire. It's that Ron DeSantis drops out, cucks to Donald Trump. Vivek
Within
Ramaswamy
hours
drops out.
He's like, I hate
cucks to
Donald Trump. And then afterwards, yeah.
It's like this, like guys, like this is like, it's over. This is done with. This is Donald Trump's party. If he wins in November and is president for the next 4 years and survives, which I don't have any reason to believe that he won't, because he's kind of a fucking weird robot in that way. It will be Donald Trump will be to the Republican Party what Barack Obama is to the Democratic Party right now.
It's wild.
Like,
right?
it will,
he is one of the only presidents who looked younger after his presidency.
Yeah, I mean, it will absolutely not be over when he leaves office in 2029. Should he win in November, it won't be over. That won't be the end of it. Trust me. He has, and like this is like part of the weird genius of Donald Trump. Like, how does he do this shit? Dude, he's such a fucking moron in some ways, and he's so brilliant in other ways. He's got that party by the balls.
Dude, I don't want to, I'm not in no way, because like to equivalate Trump and Hitler is completely diminishing all of Hitler's atrocities, because Trump is not Hitler.
I mean, Corey, I'm sure some blue-haired trans kid is really going to love what you're about to say. Go for it.
But what I'm saying is people are going to study Trump, and just to be like 100 years from now, people are going to be like, why? Just like how now, fucking 80 years past World War II, everyone in today's context and perspective and everything, and like with all of like knowing everything we know now, everyone is just like, how the fuck, like this goofy fucking guy with this weird mustache, how the fuck did he capitulate a whole country with his words?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, what the fuck? 100 years from now, people are gonna be saying the same thing about Trump. Not because he did anything fucking crazy, like as of now on January 24th, 2024. He didn't do anything crazy. He didn't start any new wars.
He almost did.
He was like the only president.
He did bomb Soleimani, so like he almost did.
So not for the lack of trying.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He didn't start any new wars. He didn't do anything fucking wild like that. But people are going to study him the same way they studied Hitler. Like, how the fuck did people just imagine 100 years from now, Dan. I'm just imagine it. 100 years from now.
I want to put this in a little bit better context for people that are listening to this and going, is he really comparing Hitler to Trump? What a stupid trope. That's not what you're doing. I think what you're doing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're basically saying is this. They're going to study Trump in the same way they studied Hitler, from the context of like how he came to power, not necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they're just gonna be like, why the fuck did everyone love this guy? Like they're gonna look like, and there's so many fucking tweets of this dumb fucking nonsense he was saying and stuff. And like 100 years from now, everyone's gonna look back and they're just gonna be looking like, and it's not gonna be in real time. So it's just gonna be photos and like little news clips from YouTube videos and all these different things of this big fucking weird orange guy just saying random shit, and the crowd going wild, and they're gonna be like, How the fuck did he? How?
Corey, I
How?
think a
Like,
lot of it. I
today
think a
we
lot of
say
it.
the same thing about Hitler.
I think a lot of it is set and setting, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's a huge contingent of the American population that is really fucking sick of the DEI stuff, the woke stuff, the trans women in women's sports. I mean, for better or worse. I mean, like I'm always willing to listen to people's opinions on these things, but like there's a huge contingent of people that are so sick of being pushed these virtue signally things, and Trump came in at just like the exact right time and was the antithesis of that. I think that has a lot to do with it, because I think if Donald Trump runs, Corey, I think if Donald Trump runs a campaign in 2004, he's done. Like there's no chance he wins the Republican
nomination. But I also think that what you're saying now in 2016, that stuff wasn't as much on the table. No one really was saying things about DEI and things like that yet. I think that people, whether they were on the right or the left, because look at what the alternative was, but the DNC cucked Bernie. Like they literally knee chopped him. The two biggest candidates at the time were Trump, which was the prodigy for the right, and Bernie Sanders for the left. Trump was kind of saying a lot of the same things Bernie was, just in a different demeanor and a different verbiage, versus Bernie talking about the working class and these elitists, and they're all fucking you over. And they were all saying the same things. And lost my train of thought. But what I was getting at basically is he oh man.
Well, I was talking about set and setting. Do you need me to write this listing ship for you?
Yeah, go ahead, get out. And when I jump back in, just pause.
No, well, what you were saying is that like the DEI stuff wasn't prevalent in 2016.
Yeah.
But there was a contingent of pushing like this weird like anti-racist agenda in 2016.
Right,
like
but
the beginnings of it were starting.
Because if you remember, Trump was, because everyone made fun of him for it, because there was little subsets of the LGBTQ community that were like on board with Trump, to the point where he was holding up rainbow flags.
Yeah.
And they had hats that said LGBTQ for Trump. Like he embraced
gays
that
for
shit.
Trump or whatever it was. Yeah.
yeah. Gays
something
for
like that.
Trump. Yeah. That was a thing.
Yeah.
And like now, like he's never disparaged any of that. And now like that's the thing. And if you remember when he talked about like Roe v. Wade, all this stuff, like and that's what makes him fucking weird too, right? And these are the things that people are going to study. He prides himself as in being the one who elected the judges to turn Roe v. Wade, but then straight calls out any Republican who dares try to attack reproductive rights.
Yeah, he talks out of both sides of his mouth. He goes been that way. He goes with whatever makes sense at the time for his own, and that's the problem with Donald Trump. He's about Donald Trump. Whatever makes him look good in his own mind, whatever makes him look good to the people that he needs at that current time. He's brilliant in the way that he does it. It works. It fucking works. How do we know it works? Because as we said 10 minutes ago, or I said, or you, I don't remember who said it. One of us did. He owns the Republican Party now. Like he completely owns it in the way that Ronald Reagan owned it, in the way that Barack Obama owns the Democratic Party. Like that's what Trump is now. And that is what we are going to have to live with. And I will say this, Donald Trump, if you could give me a Donald Trump, somebody who has the exact same personality as Donald Trump, but is actually good on policy, I would vote for that human being 15 fucking times over.
Right.
Because there are aspects of Trump's personality that I kind of agree with and I kind of like. There are a lot of aspects that I don't like. I don't think it's necessary.
But that was
for
the
you
thing.
to do a
his
Muslim
policy
ban.
never matched
his rhetoric ever.
His rhetoric or his grandiose
Nope. And it still doesn't. And that's what frustrates me so much about the MAGA crowd that think that he is just the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Because they don't pay attention to policy. They just hear the sound bites.
They hear what he says, and that's all they need to hear. And that is so much of the American voter base. And I wish that is something that we could change.
Because there's a million people, like, no, I'm sorry, not a million. There's probably tens of millions of people who agree the same way about Biden. But he says this. He just says what I want to hear. He just
I got
says
hairy
these
legs.
Words. Yeah, that's what they want to hear.
I got hairy legs.
Oh my God, Biden,
Corvette.
me too.
My 67 Corvette.
Oh, what a guy who pulled himself up by his bootstraps. I wish I owned a 67 Corvette. What's really funny is like when you play this, your voice sounds all fucked up too. I don't know what.
So if I actually want to sound like Joe Biden, I should do it that way. Anyway, do you have any final thoughts on New Hampshire, Corey?
Nikki Haley came out with the speech like she won, but she didn't.
Again, she did that twice now.
Because Trump said that also.
Oh God, dude, she is such a donor, darling.
He's like, yeah, she might be confused because her speech sounded like she won when she didn't. And she's super excited about South Carolina, and I love South Carolina.
Honestly, dude,
the next vote is in Nevada.
Dude, no. No. This will be over after South Carolina because this is actually the only.
What do you think about before?
Before what?
Before South Carolina.
Well, South Carolina is next.
Drop out before. Is it? No, Nevada's next.
No, South Carolina's next. South Carolina, then Nevada.
Sure?
South Carolina's next. That's the thing. South Carolina's next. She's going to stay in for South Carolina. She's ridiculous for doing so. But I find it absolutely entertaining that she's going to stay in because I cannot wait. And this doesn't mean I'm rooting for Trump, although in some ways I am in my own head. She is going to get waxed in her home state. And that is going to be hilarious because she is such an awful, evil, donor, Wall Street, military industrial complex darling. To watch her get fucking jail sexed in her own state is going to be a wonderful, wonderful day for me. I can't stand her. I actually don't like her more than I don't like Donald Trump. And it's not close. Are you looking up what's next? I'm telling you, it's South Carolina. We wish we had Bell here, but.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's the way it always has been. So,
right. But I'm just like, we have to refresh our memory because the DNC just decided to fucking shift everything around.
That's the DNC. That's the DNC. And that's why Biden was a write-in in New Hampshire because the DNC wanted to switch it around. But the RNC hasn't touched anything. It's the same. It's Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada.
Nevada is holding a dueling nominating contest, a state-run primary on February 6th, and a party-run caucus on February 8th.
Mm-hmm. In South Carolina, I believe, is next week. Next
is February 24th. The next major showdown would therefore be so. I'm on CBS News right now. So after Trump's win became apparent in New Hampshire, Haley vowed to remain in the race. Assuming she does, the campaigns will shift their focus to the upcoming states, with South Carolina the next major prize. Nevada and the Virgin Islands are technically next contests on the calendar, but a quirk in Nevada's selection process and the small number of delegates at stake in the Virgin Islands lessens their impact. Nevada is holding dueling nominating contests, a state-run primary on February 6th, and a party-run caucuses on February 8th. Delegates to the GOP convention will only be awarded based on the caucuses. Haley and Trump will also not be competing head-to-head. Haley is on the ballot for the primary, but not the caucuses. The Trump is on the ballot for the caucuses, but not the primary. The next major showdown, the next major showdown would therefore be on February 24th in South Carolina.
Yeah, and then Super Tuesday.
So
we're not going to get there. We are not going to get to South.
But
we're not going to get
Nevada is next.
Yeah, but nobody cares.
Right, but I wasn't wrong. I just want to hear you say it, Dan.
I guess technically you were not wrong. But yeah,
I wish we had an applause sound. Do we have an applause sound? I'm looking for.
No, we don't. But I can get us one.
But yeah, because
How about
again, the reason I'm saying that is because Trump said that in one of his speeches. Actually, he goes, yeah, Haley's all excited about South Carolina, and he's like, oh, and I love South Carolina. It's a beautiful state. I really love it there. He goes, but Nikki's forgetting about Nevada, which Nevada doesn't really mean anything, but technically Nevada is next.
Anyway. Shall we move on to the oligarchs?
I don't know. I think we should be right on some stuff, right? I don't know. Should we be a little right on a couple little things?
I'm talking about stuff that matters. It's like when you give me a gimme putt when I'm playing golf and I tap it in anyway, and you go, that's against the rules. I'm like, no, fuck you. Technically, you're right, but who cares?
Yeah, technically, you're right. You can knock that bitch in there.
Nobody cares.
Just like when I won that scramble at your bachelor party.
You didn't win. Trevor won.
Trevor won. I was there.
I guess shout out to Trevor. You need to give a shout out tonight, Corey. You forgot to give your shout out at the beginning of the show.
Holy
I'm glad I reminded you.
Yeah, I even have it written in all caps in my notes. So so there's a podcast. It's called Out of the Blank Podcast. And I guested on his show. His name's Robbie. And it's episode 1570. We talk a little bit about politics. We talk a little bit of my take on social issues, bullshit about a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's a good time. Make sure you go and check it out.
Yeah.
If you want some solo Corey action,
do that. I don't think I remembered to put a banner up for the WEF conversation, so I'm just gonna do this and pull this down. Yeah, so WEF met in Davos last week, which is essentially, as I said at the beginning of the show, as Walter Kern dubbed it, a trade show for oligarchs. There you go, WEF, not the WWF. It's almost the same thing. It's a fantasy land for all of the world's oligarchs, where they basically go, which is, there isn't that much difference. We go where all of the world's leaders go and they meet and they basically decide how we're going to turn the planet into some sort of globalist, I guess they would call it a utopia, but I think the rest of us would call it a dystopia. This is where, like, when you hear people talking about you will own nothing and you will be happy, that's Klaus Schwab. That's the leader of this event. When you hear they're gonna take your meat away and make you eat bugs, that's what happened. These are the types of things that happen when the World Economic Forum meets at Davos, which is a small town in Switzerland, I believe, a small ski town. And the first thing I think of every year when I find out that the World Economic Forum is meeting at Davos, my first thought is always like, there have got to be some wild sex parties. There just have to be somewhere. Because if you ever noticed, because they always post all the speeches and all the videos on YouTube or whatever. So like they say it all out loud to where we can all see what they're saying, because they think we're too stupid to figure it out. But they never really show the crowd. You ever notice that? Walter Kern actually did bring this up as well. I'm gonna on his podcast with Matt Taibbi. So I'm not going to take credit for that, for noticing that. I'll give credit to Walter and Matt for that. But they don't. They never show the crowd.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
They do kind of from the side. Like you can kind of see them for a second. There's a side angle.
Camera angles and mirrors are wild, dude. Like I remember when I was downtown for the Lions game, we were in a parking lot and there were a lot of people, but they were spaced out. But the way the camera angles worked is they would bring the camera in low and close to about 20 people cheering for the Lions. But I guarantee you on national TV, that 20 looked like 100.
It probably did. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting the way they do that. So how many of these people go to this event and they're just there to just fuck hookers, man? just have these wild, like they're like if there's like an Alex Jones like weird conspiracy like
yeah,
what's
and we're not
going
even
on.
talking Epstein stuff. We're just talking about blowing hookers, the normal stuff
Yeah.
us common people do.
Would love to be a part of. Like I just have a feeling there are just some
You've never
wild
had a blowing
parties
stripper
there.
night, Dan?
No, I'm a little bit more of a Puritan than you, Corey. What can I say?
I mean, I've never had a blowing stripper night either.
I mean, I've had some wild nights, but nothing to that degree.
I've had some nights that I would say, I wasn't there. What are you talking about?
Like, I would be fascinated to be there. I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, no, you're right, because I bet you the blow was a hell of a lot better, and I bet you the strippers were a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, and the gun rights are better too.
And the quality of the blow and the quality of the strippers are nothing that I've ever been to.
They're just out shooting guns.
The quantities? That's debatable. The quality? Nope, I'm not even going to pretend.
Anyway, my point of bringing this, my point of even bringing up the WAF at Davos isn't to necessarily talk about like what is gone over there, because I mean you can look it up on YouTube. You can see the things these people are talking about. They're trying to globalize the planet, for better or worse.
It's the same. And what it really is, like a lot of these things, like in my personal view, WF, like the Davos thing. There's another one. It's the was it Berkshire? It's something Hathaway.
Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's firm.
Yeah, those whole things. Because they have conferences as well. There's the ALEC. You ever hear ALEC?
No.
It's that group that they meet with congressmen and stuff, and it happens in America. But the ALEC group basically writes legislation, and they try to lobby every single politician just to take their bills that they've already written.
Yeah, it's where the lobbyists write the legislation.
Right. And they run around at this convention trying to find congressmen who will just sign it, basically.
Or promote it in Congress and try to get it passed into law. Yeah.
And nudge, wink, wink, take care of me, I'll take care of you. Yeah, so like I have always just grouped WF in that bullshit.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good segue into like the point I wanted to make by even bringing up Davos this week is that you finally had, because you're talking about what the establishment likes to do, and you're talking about like the difference between actual libertarian laissez-faire capitalism and the type of capitalism that we have mostly globally and in the United States, which is where it is where the government is captured by certain corporations and the government sticks their fists into capitalism, which is an actual capitalism. So my whole point of bringing this up is that Javier Milei was at Davos this past week, and he gave maybe the best speech that I've ever seen.
So Javier Milei is the new Argentinian president, right? That is the libertarian.
Yes. And like, I don't know yet. He's hasn't been in office very long. He might not be the real deal. He might be full of shit. I have no fucking clue. But
it's also interesting, right?
Very interesting. And I know that he has already begun to gut the Argentinian government. Has he gone far enough? I don't know. I'm not into his workings.
Because in the southern continent of the South Americans, far enough is very subjective. And they're not even sure what far enough is. But what I find interesting about that is usually America likes to influence coups. I'm saying that in a very conservative way.
Yeah.
Because like America somehow is always either in the room or overseeing or has an opinion on it, like they have a stake in it about every coup that happens in South America. And it usually has to do with very left-leaning governments. So I'm curious to see what happens in a country like Argentina with a very right-leaning government.
Well, Javier Milei is trying to dollarize the country. So I don't think we're going to.
So he's immediately got America on his side.
Yeah. So, and which is kind of a smart move, honestly, on his
I was
part.
just going to say, if you were
It's-
going to try to rewrite an entire country, what better way than to get America, the biggest interventionist country, on your back,
to
on your
not
side,
intervene.
than to say, hey, I'm going to do this shit, but hey, we're going to run it with the American dollar.
Yeah. So point is, Javier Milei actually went to Davos, and people actually question that. Like, why would you go to this globalist? Like, you're a libertarian, dude. Like, why would you go to this like globalist fucking trade show and participate in that? And he basically said, I'm going there to spread the message of freedom, right? So he goes up, or liberty and freedom. He goes up, he gives a speech, and basically says most of the things that any libertarian, or even people like you and me, Corey, who aren't full-fledged libertarians, but are certainly libertarian
Now I know what
leaning
I'm
and
watching tomorrow.
and like liberty. And he goes and he says all of the right things. And what do you have? You have these establishment cucks coming out. I'm not going to name any names, but I will say that if you look at our show notes and you say, and you look at if you like, we have a lot of show names. This show is in there. And
yeah,
it is
some people,
a
big
female
shocker.
pundit.
Some people that we typically like disagreed with how we feel, but go ahead.
So, they're coming out and they're saying things like Javier Milei went out and was essentially cucking for, neoliberalism and calling out libertarianism and saying things like, he sounded like a 15-year-old that just read Ayn Rand for the first time. And that really actually set a light bulb off in my head about folks that don't actually understand the sort of libertarian ideal of laissez-faire capitalism. They don't get it.
The idea of libertarians are aggressively trying to take over the world to leave you alone.
And leave you alone. Yes, that's exactly right. They want to say things like, oh my God, did you just read Ayn Rand for the first time? Like that. Once I hear anybody like disparaging Ayn Rand, whom I actually like, I like her novels. But they sit there and they pretend like Ayn Rand is like the end all be all of like libertarianism. Now she is from the perspective of like fictional writing. I mean, I don't think there's anybody bigger than Ayn Rand.
You know what I equivalent anyone who says something like that, like, oh, did you read Ayn Rand for the first time? Is the way that there were people, little subsets on the left, disparaging people for reading Harry Potter. It's a fucking fictional book. It's a fucking fictional book.
Oh, did you just read J.K. Rowling for the first time?
Christians who would freak out about people reading Harry Potter, to which in a weird way all of a sudden switched to where the left hated people who read Harry Potter. But at the end of the day, it's a fictional book.
But that's what's interesting about like Republican, Democrat, or liberal, conservative. Like people don't know what to do with the libertarians, right? Because the conservatives kind of try to claim them, and then the libertarians are like, I mean, we agree with you kind of like on the woke cultural stuff because it's like freedom of speech and like leave people alone, right? So we kind of agree. So as a libertarian, like you kind of agree with conservatives on that side. And then the liberals just like lump you in with Republicans. Like, have you ever heard the phrase like libertarians are just Republicans that are conservatives that like to smoke pot? Which is such a stupid thing to say. It's not even close. But yeah, so like these establishment,
it's the same type of caricature that someone would make about people on the left.
These establishment pundits about Javier Milei's speech were just so unbelievably off base on what he was actually saying, because he said, and I'm not, this is not a direct quote, but because I only watched the speech once, but he said something to the effect of, at the end of the day, fascism, socialism, and modern progressivism aren't fundamentally that different. And I heard one particular pundit who is in our if you like list in our show notes, say that comparing those three things is essentially ridiculous. How can you possibly compare modern progressivism to fascism? How could you possibly do that? And if you cannot see that all three of those things lead to one place, which is authoritarianism, you've lost me. Like, you've lost the plot. You don't understand what libertarianism is.
Right.
You've never bothered to even try to understand what libertarianism is. And then you want to shit on him by saying, oh, he just sounded like a 15-year-old that read Ayn Rand for the first time. That's what these people do.
Right. Because like it just takes a a zoom out, 1,000-mile zoom out to realize fascism is something like, I mean, in our microsphere of America, fascism is something that both the left and the right, Republicans and Democrats, have been pursuing aggressively. Socialism, does it work on paper? Yeah, sure. There are some countries that are able to achieve a factor of socialism, but if you look at the turmoil in in those countries, a lot of the people are fighting to make it more of a mixed economy, which is less socialism, more capitalism.
China.
And what was the other one? There was the modern progressivism, fascism, and modern progressivism, fascism, and what was the third one?
And just socialism.
Yeah, and socialism. Yeah, okay, so I covered all of them. But
so,
it's not hard to connect the dots if you look at it with a more open mind.
These people don't have a good attack on libertarianism. And I've said this multiple times on this show, and like until I'm convinced, and maybe someday I will be, like, I'm not a full-fledged libertarian. I'm more of a minarchist than an anarchist, right? I certainly have disagreements with Ayn Rand herself, but I have massive respect for her, and I think she was a brilliant woman, and I think a lot of her points were well taken. But it's like, if you just look at libertarianism and just go and just reduce it to Ayn Rand, you're not paying attention to what is actually important. And that is like that Javier Milei went to Davos and was pushing against globalism, and he was pushing for liberty. And I don't get why libertarianism and just the concept of liberty itself is somehow this awful right-wing concept that needs to be done away with. And then she goes out and she talks about this pundit that I won't name. I mean, maybe I will on the next episode. But she rallies against capitalism. I'm like, and this is somebody that I respect. I'm like, you're absolutely better than that. You're absolutely better than that, because she rallies against laissez-faire capitalism as if it's like this thing where, people can take advantage and, make poor people more poor. But she completely leaves out what makes modern day capitalism a problem, because it is a problem, and it's not the capitalism itself. It's the fact that it's the government capture of capitalism. It's protectionist policies. It's the fact that these lobbyists, as you talked about at the beginning of this conversation, Corey, can go and basically write the legislation themselves and say, we'll donate to your next fucking campaign if you find a way to put this thing into law. Yeah. Laissez-faire capitalism is the absolute opposite of that. Government stays out of the market. We don't have that anywhere in the world right now. Now, in the United States, are we the freest market?
Singapore,
we are, but we're nowhere near free.
No, Singapore, I think, has us beat in the freest market.
You might be right.
I think Singapore is like,
I don't know, but we are still, even so, we are still one of the freest markets in the world, and we are not even close. Not even close to being a free market because of government regulation.
And that's like, to just go back to listen to previous episodes. We've talked about this with things like the Jones Act, like land use acts, and how government intervention literally is one of the main reasons why, when we had the Maui fires last summer, which fucking Americans have such a short goddamn attention span that they just completely forget about things like this because it's 1,000 miles away. But one of the main reasons Maui caught on fire was because of government overreaction and government intervention.
But and people like the pundit I'm talking about, they don't know how to argue against these things. They don't know how to argue against these things, so they just attack. It's this very progressive. I'm not even gonna say progressive because like the fundamentals of progressivism I actually like. If you think about like what fundamental progressivism is, like trying to progress society, I dig that. But what it's been bastardized into is things like this, where it's like you look for, you try to find the holes and you can't find them, so you just attack.
Yeah.
And I would absolutely love to go on this person's show, Corey. I've never been more confident that I could go on this person's show and absolutely take her to school. Like I really believe I could.
So I was just thinking about that right before you said that. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about our list of the people that we have on our show, and I was about to say that like I would literally love to have a beer with every single person on our list of who you might like, and take them to task like off the podcast and have a conversation with them. But I don't know if I could ever do it on the air because everyone's on the air personality is a little bit different than they are off the air. And I like to think that these people would listen and not try to but or immediately try to talk over me, because all these shows are bigger than our show. So we'd be on their grounds, not ours. So they'd be able to just tell us to shut up.
I would be very confident that I could hold my own in this particular argument. Very, very,
I think
very
I could hold my own in any of the arguments that I make. Like, unless I'm at your wedding and I'm like 10 Dan Hattons deep.
And no, but even so, you just had you had a fucking DEI progressive screaming at you. You're never going to win that argument anyway. That's what happened. Corey at my wedding got in a fight.
Still sits with me, Dan.
Corey at my wedding got in a fight with like a super like woke anti-racist DEI. Like these things all sound like makes them a good person. But just one of these, like,
she probably is like I feel like if my car was broke down, she would pull over to help me.
I know her pretty well. I like her for certain reasons. I dislike her for others. But yeah, like it was just one of those situations where she just fucking screamed at you and said, "You're white, so I don't need to listen to you." That's essentially what happened.
I wasn't making a scene.
Exactly.
Ultimately, it was her making the scene. It wasn't me making the scene.
And made you look like the asshole. No, I get it. We've all been in those situations. Like you just want to have an actual conversation.
Where I was like, all right, let's just stop talking about this and just be friends. And then she was still not having it.
And she didn't want to be friends.
But as soon as the crowd disappeared, we were also still drinking together and having a great time in the bar.
She walked away. She thought, based on that 10-minute conversation, that she knew everything about you. She knew that you were a racist. She knew that you were a piece of shit. She knew that you were a transphobe. She knew that you were a homophobe. And she walked around probably telling a bunch of people that. She probably went home and talked about like, oh man, I bartended this wedding and I talked to this guy and what a piece of shit. She knew everything about you based on a 10-minute fucking conversation. And that is what is wrong with this ideology. Right there. I said it. I said it. I don't care. Yeah. Anyway, Davos. Those are bad people. Fucking pay attention. But don't.
Where do we go?
But don't listen to the people that are telling you that like the one seemingly good person that was at Davos giving a good speech, saying the right things, is somehow the bad guy. Those people aren't on your side. Anyway, what do we got left? MTG?
Yeah, let me hear about this.
You don't know much about this yet, do you?
Nope.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's right. Sometimes 1 out of 1,000. She's got principles. I'm just gonna go ahead and play this video here real quick. Oh, where are you, MTG?
Oh,
Here
man,
she is.
not even in
Here
the
she is.
share.
Oh, look at how pretty she is. See how pretty she is? She's so pretty. She's so beautiful. Here we go.
Are you sure about that?
that in no way, shape, and form will I support any type of CR. We aren't continuing Nancy Pelosi's budget, and that if he moves forward with a separate deal trading our border security, weakening HR2 in exchange for $60 billion to Ukraine, I told him yesterday in his office that I would vacate the chair. That is absolutely unacceptable, and we actually have the power of the purse. We're the ones that are in control, and we need to control the negotiations.
So she's going to try it.
So, okay. So is she doing so? Okay. I gotta think about how I want to say this, because Marjorie Taylor Greene is threatening to vacate Mike Johnson's speaker seat, probably because Mike Johnson isn't as hot as Kevin McCarthy. I'm convinced MTG and Kevin McCarthy were banging on the side, but that's a whole nother story.
We'll save that for next week.
Probably for never. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is threatening to try to vacate Mike Johnson's speakership if he goes along with a package to reduce the situation at the border if it's tied to money to Ukraine. I look at that and I go, I don't see what's wrong with that. Like, I'm
Right.
sorry. I don't agree with MTG almost ever. She says 1,000 things. I might agree with 4 of them. This is one of those 4. This is the
And
thing
she
that
might
we
even
talk about.
you might not even agree with the motive.
Yeah, the motive could be wrong. You're absolutely right.
Right.
She
But the
might
idea
not be
that-
doing this in good faith.
Connecting the two smells like bullshit.
It absolutely does. We talk about this all the time, Corey. We talk about is it Thomas Massey or
Pork
Rand
barrel,
Paul?
earmarks. There's a bunch of different verbs
Yeah,
for 'em, but
where it's like
just-
let's go ahead and like not sign money away or sign bills into law that have nothing to do
Right.
with each other.
like never mind never mind connecting these. Vote on a Ukraine bill. Do all of our representatives want to send money to Ukraine? I hope to have faith in the person I duly elected to be my representative to make the choices that I hope they'll make based on what I voted for them. If they don't, I will vote for someone else next time. Stop making it complicated for the American people. Make the votes simple.
What's interesting about this, Corey?
Right? Does that make
Is
sense
the-
what I'm saying?
No, it absolutely makes sense, because I was going to say the same thing and you said it for me.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. That's all right. That just makes it faster for us to move for me to move on to my next point, which is
Hey,
that
thanks, man.
you have, again, political pundits. I'll call this one out because I don't care. Anna Kasparian, the Young Turks. You have others. I'm sure the Rachel Maddow types have said these things where they're going to
really
look.
just shows your degree of respect for other pundits. On the
I
field.
did. That's
By how
absolutely
you
right.
went on
I
a
have-
whole tirade about someone that you didn't want to mention their name, but then you're like, Anna Kasparian. Fucking Rachel Maddow.
I'll tell you who I respect and who I don't. These types are sitting there and trying to act like Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing this because she is because Mike Johnson is maybe going to side, quote unquote, side with Democrats on something. That's not at all what she said. That's not at all what she said. If Democrats had come forth and agreed to split these two issues, the border and Ukraine, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene had come forth and said something about getting on board with something
essentially, if MTG moved the goalposts, then this conversation would be different.
Absolutely. But what she's doing is she's calling out Mike Johnson and saying, do not go along with a Senate package that ties border security to Ukraine. Like, that's called actually having principle.
Because let's really think about it. Why are the two coinciding with each other?
They have nothing to do with each other, as we know. Nothing to do with each other. Nothing.
Border
Nothing.
security, or just It's fucking stupid how the term border security is a right-wing talking point. Okay, taking care of our border and making sure that the people that are seeking asylum get the proper due justice, and that everyone coming here across our border is getting, the proper care to where they can either become a citizen or they get kicked out because they're a piece of shit, because both are coming, right? There are people coming across our border who are just seeking a better life, and there are people here with nefarious actions that are just trying to smuggle drugs and smuggle people, and we probably shouldn't let them in. But regardless of that, and taking care of the border issue of immigration policy and getting people into our country and stopping the flood, that it's not just me saying it and it's not just Republicans saying it. You got the Governor Adams in New York. You got governors in Chicago. You got governors in Democratic states who are saying that this immigration problem is an issue. And why are we convoluting the issue that's at our border with a country that's thousands of miles away in Ukraine?
With a
MTG
foreign
is
war
absolutely right.
that we are
I can't believe I'm saying it, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is absolutely right.
Yep, she's right. She is right.
These are two separate issues.
But Corey,
and the Senate, because the war hawks and the establishment on either side want to give money to keep Raytheon paid, so they keep paying. So Raytheon keeps paying for their campaigns. They want to give them money to pay for more bombs to drop on innocent people in Ukraine. That they have to tie the two together because the border is a contentious issue in election season.
Corey, can I pull a what's the word I'm looking for? Can I pull a DEI for you here?
Yeah,
Corey, Marjorie Taylor Greene might be right this time, but guess what? She's right for the wrong reasons.
Is that what people say?
She's right. She like if
for the wrong reasons.
If a broken clock is right twice a day, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a broken clock that you see once a year. Like
no, Dan. She's a fucking leap year calendar that's used every year. And once every 4 goddamn years, it's right on goddamn point.
It's exactly right. It's the point we made at the beginning of the show. I don't care who says it. When they say the right things, they're still the right things. Even if it's a fucking moron like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she got it right.
Right.
She got this one right. She's I don't know. She's a dipshit, but stop tying these stupid things together. Now, is it a little bit grandiose for her to be threatening to vacate Mike Johnson's speakership? Sure, because we know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She loves herself. She loves to be in the news. That's all this is about. But the fact that she's even calling it out to me is a good thing.
Yeah. Liberty Twitcher said, is it wrong for us to be ignoring our own borders and immigration law and letting people in even though it's against the law? Instead, should we enforce the laws? So that's what we're kind of getting at. We're getting at how MTG is just trying to separate. Because right now the Senate is trying to make a package of giving money to Ukraine. And if we give money to Ukraine, then we're going to give money towards the border crisis. And Mike Johnson in the House of Reps is thinking about voting for it. And she's like, why is this even a thing? Do we have to do? Oof, that was a burp. I tried to stifle it. I'm sorry. It's the Shure microphone. It's just so goddamn good.
So good.
But
not a sponsor, by the way.
Not a sponsor. But she's basically talking about how why is the Ukraine crisis and our current domestic border crisis have to be on a bill together? Because they shouldn't be. But it's just lazy politics of all right, fine, we'll give you this money if you give us this money, when both of these things should be conversed out.
And so I will answer Liberty Twitcher's question this way. So he asks, I'm just going to read it again. Is it wrong for us to be ignoring our own borders and immigration law and letting people in, even though it's against the law? Instead, should we enforce our laws? That's a really fucking nuanced question. It's a really it's an interesting answer because I don't know that our border law, I don't know that our immigration laws are great to start with. However, even if they were there, so like, let's just say I became president tomorrow and I was tasked, like my biggest thing was like, all right, let's solve what's going on at the border. Because whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're a liberal, whether you're a liberal, a progressive, a conservative, doesn't matter. You see the footage of what's going on at the border and all these people waiting under bridges. There is a problem.
A mess.
What causes that problem is what you need to fix. So the first thing we need to fix is stop getting involved in Central American and South American affairs, and stop organizing coups, and stop saying that you're supporting democracy while you're going in and usurping democracy to meet financial ends, and let these people actually elect their leaders in the way that they want to elect them. And
because Liberty, that's the thing, is we're destabilizing countries in the Southern Americas to the point where these people have no choice but to leave.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So we start the problem for them leaving their countries in the first place, right? So that's number one. That's the first thing you stop. The second thing you do is you make it easier. You make it easier to become a U.S. citizen, because I don't know if you've ever like looked into what it takes to become a green card, Corey, but there is a flow chart of what it takes to get a green card. It is like 40 fucking steps. And if you fuck anything up, you start immediately back to the beginning, right? So make the process of becoming a U.S. citizen easier. And then, then maybe you lock down the border. Then maybe you go, okay, let's have a situation where we have avenues for you to come in. You make it so that there isn't a free. First of all, those two things are going to make it so that there isn't such a free flow of people. And they come in right now, and you ship them up to these sanctuary cities, right? And they have nowhere to go because they can't work. So what do? You use US.
You make them pay taxes. You make them work.
Absolutely.
Like exactly.
Let me finish with this. Let me finish with this before you get to that. Every economic metric that you look at tells you that immigration is good for the economy, not bad for the economy.
Because every economic metric also tells you that depopulation is the worst. And the one reason why America doesn't deal with depopulation like Japan, all of Europe, China, all these other countries is because it's boosted by an immigration system. And Liberty, you said, oh my God, it's our fault. Really? Yes. When you look up virtually every country in South America, whether it's Nicaragua, El Salvador, Venezuela, and more recent, our country has literally toppled governments and destabilized these countries, and then created things like the war on drugs that has literally boosted black market sales, that has completely funded things like cartels that have only fucked up their countries more, to the point where people are in these countries where it's virtually a gun pointed to their head, where like, you either join us or we'll kill you. And so these people are leaving. Okay. And so these countries, yes, they are leaving. And then you made another, like, these people are leaving these countries because they feel like they have nothing else to do. And then you also said, which is a very good point, you said you are very familiar with what's necessary to become an American citizen, and it's difficult. And what I'm also saying is it shouldn't be. America in the 1800s was letting 1 million citizens in a year through Ellis Island when we didn't have computers, we didn't have AI, we didn't have fucking calculators, and we literally were just letting people in, figuring out who they are. If they had the paperwork, you let them in. If they didn't, they had to go through another process and go through a couple other steps. We can streamline this issue that's at our southern border, and there are people coming in with good faith, and we should be able to figure out the people who are coming in with good faith and let them in. And instead of just moving them around and letting them be a burden on the American taxpayer by putting them in homeless shelters in New York and then shifting them off to Chicago and then shifting them from there to California, we should have them on some sort of express pass like you see at fucking Cedar Point or Disney or any fucking theme park that's figured this shit out, and you get them to get where they at the very least get a green card on the path to citizenship, where instead of them being a burden on the country, they can just get a fucking job at anywhere, from whether it's working at a fucking trades job or working at a Walmart, where they can at least make a little bit of money so they can get a grasp and get a basic root in the American system to where they could start working, instead of them sitting here and being another stooge to be a political pawn in a bullshit issue in our country to where they could have been solved in the first place. And when you do things like this, you're boosting the economy, because you're just creating all these jobs that we talk about in America where people don't want to work anymore. You got 1 million people coming here who want to fucking work, and you just give them the fucking money and you get them the citizenship. And then guess what? A lot of them are leaning more right. So Republicans are freaking out about the great replacement when you have all these people coming from places like Cuba, where the furthest thing they want to get away from is a socialist country. They want to come here and have fucking liberties and work.
That's interesting, because Liberty's last message was the Democrats are importing future voters. Everyone knows that.
No. Look at the schematics right now. Look at the voting polls. Wait a minute. People with Hispanic cultures are leaning right.
I understand that, but I think there is some truth to that. I think there's. I'm not like a great replacement theory person, but I think there is some truth to the.
And also, I want to say, Liberty, people jumping the line, people doing that shit, I also agree with. It's wrong. But the problem is they're doing it because of the fact that our immigration system in the first place is fucked up.
And I guess to go with, I'm not a great replacement theory person, but I do think it's pretty obvious that Democrats think that people coming in from the southern border are going to vote for them. We talked about this pre-show, Corey. We talked about how fucking hilarious, to go back to your point about like people coming from more socialist or even communist countries that are fleeing that type of plight are coming over, and not such a huge fan of the sort of socialist or even communist musings of certain factions of the Democratic Party, and how hilarious it would be if the Democrats let all these people in. Somehow we find a way to make them citizens, give them jobs, and to get them paying into the system like the rest of us are. If the plan completely fucking backfired and they just started voting Republican instead of the what the great replacement theory is, which is that they're trying to bring in voters, because there is a chance that could happen. I mean, if you just look at the polling numbers of Hispanics, particularly near the border, particularly in southern Florida, they're not so keen on the Democratic Party's message.
Yeah, Dan, it's Google, so take that for what you will. But all I did was type in Hispanics and black communities going Republican. Newsweek goes black and Hispanics are turning to Trump. Washington Post, Trump polls better than ever with black and Hispanic voters. The Hill,
makes
more
sense.
black Latino voters supporting Republicans. NPR, Hispanic and minority voters are increasingly shifting to the right. Washington Post, the GOP gains among voters of color are Bloomberg, GOP has more black Latino candidates. Wall Street Journal, GOP gaining support among black and Latino voters. Axios, GOP made inroads with women Hispanic voters in the midterms. Vox, can the party of Trump really become a multiracial coalition? Politico, voters of color did move to the right. Pew Research Center, what we know about Hispanic and Republicans. ABC News, why is Biden losing support from people of color? Brookings, will Latino voters help lead the GOP victory to 2004? Fox News, Republicans make two huge gains among black and Latino. Should I keep going? New York Times, consistent signs of erosion of black.
You don't have to keep going. You don't have to keep going, because would you name probably 20 publications there? I would say,
I just kept fucking going.
17 of them were left leaning.
Yeah,
left leaning or super fucking left to start with. So it's
and a few percentage points shift ain't nothing significant.
Really? Because Biden won 2020 by 40,000 votes. 40,000 votes.
In Michigan alone, it's been a couple thousand votes between Biden, Trump, Democrat, Republican. No, like that's real. The thing. It's like
it's real fucking close.
But you talk about some Hispanics that are going to the GOP. Like we're talking, ultimately we're kind of agreeing on the same thing. I'm not talking about handouts. I'm talking about giving these people a fair shake. That the same people in the 1800s and 1888s and and I'm not even talking about people from South America. I'm talking about people from Europe, I'm talking Italians and Polish and Irish people. We're talking about white people whose culture is very different from South American people. And they got here through an immigration system that probably wasn't the best, but it worked without computers. And they all came here and they didn't get handouts when they got here. They just got the right to work. And all I'm asking for is to give these people just a fucking citizenship so they have the right to work.
Not even citizenship.
Instead of just moving them around and instead of moving them around and then taking my kids who I pay taxes for to go to a public school to where they don't have to go to school because we don't know where else to put these immigrants, and we're treating them like subhuman and shoving them into gymnasiums and public schools.
And then and paying for them to stay in hotel rooms. It's like, doesn't it just make sense?
And then
if you
he
let
said,
them work?
sure, if it's to work, and absolutely. And that's what I think that we can have a more streamlined immigration system that we have now than we did in the 1880s when it was all based on paper and just throwing shit at the wall and see what
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
you go to Ellis Island, you stamp your stamp because some of these people couldn't even write. You stamp your stamp and then you're off and you're good to go.
Yeah. Like they'd be like, what's your name? And it'd be like, Jose, if there's Gio Panopoulos, and they'd be like, oh, you're Mike Smith. Get your ass in here. Like, that's literally what they did. That happened to my ancestors when they came across. Because they couldn't pronounce his name. They just like, you're Mike Smith. Get your ass in here.
We can.
And then
the
Republicans are on the other side going, welcome to America, and make sure to vote. Because back then it was the immigrant party was the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party.
The whole point is like, and we can end the show with this, Corey, because we're getting a little long in the tooth here, but like, and don't worry, I'll let you respond. We can all agree that there is a crisis at the border. Like, you see the video footage, you see the drone footage. There's just thousands of people
really
lined up
because we're afraid to arrest them when they're here, so we're trying to stop them and we just send them back 100 yards, and then like 100 come, we send back 80, and then another 100 come on top of that 80, and then there's 180, and then we send back 160. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fabricated issue is basically what I'm saying. It's intentional by both sides. It's a problem.
Well, yeah. Because it's a political issue,
just like
because
abortion.
you can use it. Yeah, like because you can use immigration to win an election, and we talked about this earlier on in the show about how like
Liberty disagreed with me. He said it's a crisis of our making. It is intentional, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's intentional, but yes, it's definitely a crisis of our making, and some of that has to do with our foreign policy. Some of it has to do with our domestic policy. But something has to be done, and I think the start is the people that are here. Good luck shipping them out. Let them fucking work. And then you can focus on the border.
It's bullshit that someone wants to come here for the American dream and it takes them 8 fucking years to get a citizenship. If you have all of your paper, like, I understand that if you come here,
Corey, I'm not even worried about citizenship, dude. I'm talking about work visas. Just work visas. That's it. Because we have because I work in retail sales, and like these like shitty non-skilled jobs, they're having a hard time finding people to work.
And Liberty, I can guarantee I'll even concede to that. Like, yeah, if they work, I don't want people coming here just to be another fucking succulent on the taxes.
If 100%. If they don't work, ship them out, just as we've always done. But there are jobs available, and every economic metric tells you that immigration
every job
is good for the economy, not bad.
Money into the economy that stimulates more jobs. You know, it's a snowball going downhill when it comes to economy. It's, like when you look at the economy goes in 3 phases. It's the recession, the trough, the peak, and the growth. Okay, it's just a wave that goes like this. It's a snowball. You bring people in, and then all of a sudden there's an extra person working in the economy, creating production because they're in a factory, and even though they're only making, $15, $16 an hour, at $15 a week, 40 times 15, that's $600 a week. That's $600 a week into the economy every single week. That is like 35 or 36 grand into the economy. That money compounded by a million other people doing that is going to create other jobs of people that need to fill the need of them spending their money. So more people here who are working, and you're right, Liberty, if they are working, because that is a very, very important word when we talk about this. If, and you get them in, you get them to work, it's great for the country.
And we have, to close it out,
I'm not wanting people here just to have them get onto welfare and things like that. Like
we have in Detroit, we actually have a pretty decent Hispanic community. And I can tell you, like, most of these people want to work. Like this Republican trope of like they want to come and just take advantage of our welfare system. I actually kind of agree with Liberty and that like Democrats would like it if that's what they wanted to, if that's what they did, because it makes them reliant on the government. I actually agree with that. But like culturally Hispanics, they want to come here and work. And that's what I've seen. That's what I've noticed as far as like my personal experience. They want to come here and work and try and achieve the American dream for the most part. Are there some people that don't? Sure. But I think if you're going to actually invoke what is the stereotype of Hispanics, Corey? Like if we're just going to have some fun with this. You can
hard worker.
Yeah, no, you can drive to a Home Depot and a group of them will be sitting on the back of a pickup truck going, "Hey, you need some brickwork done?" Like, yeah, these are hard. These are mostly hardworking people. I dig it.
So I worked a lot of trades work back in the day, and yes, there was always Latinos on the job working their fucking ass off.
Yeah, all the time.
And
like,
it was funny.
That's actually a stereotype of Hispanics, is that they work too fucking much.
Right, because they're taking our jobs.
They're taking our jobs. They work too much for too little. That's the stereotype, right?
But he makes a good point. Like, because Liberty, you could say that about anyone. You throw welfare at anyone, and they're gonna take it. You look at the Appalachians that are probably between at least 70% to probably 90% white, and it is like the red states are some of the most densely populated welfare states in the country. You throw welfare at anyone, and absolutely they're going to take it. And that's a problem. There should be stipulations on welfare, and I agree with that. Like I'm not heartless. That if it's like, but that goes down to we should have just more caseworkers. We should have more immigrant lawyers. We should have more people being able to look at someone's case at a case by case basis and not do any sort of generic cookie cutter thing. Because when you do the generic cookie cutter thing, people fall through the cracks. If you do it right, the people that fall through the cracks deserve to fall through the cracks, and the people that need help get help.
Anyway, we should probably end it there.
But that was fun. Liberty, I'm glad you showed up.
That
was you got my brain turning. I think I had a really good fucking rant there for a minute.
For those podcast listeners that will not be viewing us live, like Liberty was so gracious to do on Twitch, tell the people where they can find us, Corey Walsh.
Libservative Podcast is found on all social media and podcast platforms. Our website is libservativeshow.com. We can be found at Libservative on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Instagram and Twitter, LibservativePod. Our TikTok videos can be found at Libservative Podcast, and you can reach out directly at libservativepod@gmail.com. Subscribe today.
And hopefully we'll have Bell back next week and not fondling dead people. If you don't get that one, download the podcast.
You think he's diddling dead people right now?
He might be.
When he's not touching his keyboard, Googling our facts, he's diddling people that are unalived. Two intellectual idiots fostering political and cultural literacy. As always, he has been Corey Walsh. He's been Dan Griffin.
This has been Libservative. And until next time, we are out of here.